welcome to this video. So I am excited. I wanted to dive a bit deeper into the Bible, into a specific character of the Bible. So today I have chosen to bring you with me into a deep dive into Queen Esther in the Bible. Like, the fact that she's a queen is like, whoa, okay, that's cool. And that she's a woman, like a power woman in the Bible. So if you are ready, we will dive into Queen Esther's story. And yeah, just relax, let your mind glide away to a faraway land filled with kings and queens and peoples and battles. But also try to think of like the applicability of this story, that like these characters in the Bible, they are as real and as normal as you and me, or we are as cool and as epic as they are, either way you want to look at it. But yeah, so let's travel away and dig into this story. The story of Esther begins with a grand banquet at the palace of King Ahasuerus, also referred to as King Xerxes. The king had become drunk on wine and commanded that his wife, Queen Vashti, come out before everyone to show how beautiful she was. Queen Vashti refused to be paraded before everyone, and King Xerxes was so angry at her disrespect and disregard for his request that he divorced her. So the king called for a nationwide beauty pageant to be held to find a new attractive queen. A Jewish woman named Esther was taken with other young women to a citadel. Esther's cousin Mordecai had taken Esther in and raised her as his own after Esther's parents had died. A man named Haggai was put in charge of preparing the woman for meeting the king. Esther's beauty won her Haggai's favor, and she was given special attention. Esther was careful, however, not to tell anyone her nationality, as Mordecai had warned her not to. When it was Esther's turn to go before the king, he immediately found her the most attractive and beautiful of all women and placed the royal crown on her head. King Ahasuerus held a great banquet for his new queen, Esther. Esther continued to hide her Jewish background, as Mordecai had instructed her to do, because he knew it would be dangerous for her if anyone found out she was a Jew. One night when Mordecai was sitting by the king's gate, he overheard two guards named Bigtana and Teresh conspiring to assassinate King Xerxes. Mordecai told Queen Esther of the plan, and Esther told the king, giving credit to Mordecai for overhearing the plan. The two guards were hanged. Mordecai then refused to bow down to Haman, the highest of all nobles. When Haman found out about this and that Mordecai was a Jew, Haman became enraged with anger and wanted to kill not only just Mordecai, but all of the Jewish nation. Haman convinced King Xerxes to kill all Jews as they stood in opposition to the king's rule. King Ahasuerus agreed and set a date for all Jews to be killed. Mordecai told Esther about the king's edict to kill all the Jewish people. Esther feared for her life and tried to avoid his request to do something. Mordecai again pleaded with Queen Esther to do something to save the people. Esther responded by instructing all Jews to join her in fasting for 3 days and 3 nights. Then she would approach the king with her request. Esther went to King Xerxes after 3 days of fasting, and the king asked her what her request was. Queen Esther asked that the king and Haman join her at a banquet the next day. The king said yes and asked Esther to let her request be known at the banquet. Haman was still so enraged with Mordecai that he went to set up a pole to impale Mordecai in the morning before the banquet. The king could not sleep that night and began to read the book that contained all that had happened during his reign. The king read and was reminded of how Mordecai exposed the plot to assassinate the king. The king wanted to reward Mordecai for his good deed, and he called Haman in to ask what should be done for a man who the king delights in. Haman thought the king was talking about himself and responded by saying extravagant gifts and honor. Haman was even more enraged when the king told him it was Mordecai. The next day was the banquet Queen Esther had called for. The king again asked Esther what her request was so that he could grant her what she wanted. Esther boldly asked that she and her people be spared and that Haman had plotted to kill all Jews for money. The king was filled with anger against Haman and had him hanged on the very pole that Haman had set up for Mordecai. Queen Esther and Mordecai were given Haman's estate. They were honored with royal garments, and a decree was written to protect all Jews. Wow. So that's the story of Esther. And I think that it's the only book in the Bible that it never mentions God. So that's very interesting, but you can see like God all through it, like how God opens the doors and like God's favor and God's like creativity and protection, and yeah, how his love for the Jewish people, that they are his chosen people. They were his chosen people back in the Old Testament, but now that we have Jesus, it's different. Now it's like all of us get to be included. But back then it was like the Jews were really special, and it's so interesting, like with just the Jews being such a target group, like with the Holocaust also in the 1940s. And it's just terrible, but it's so interesting, like to kill all the Jews. How foolish is that? Alright, so another website says that Esther's birth name was Hadassah. She was of the tribe of Benjamin and lived during the time Israel was exiled, and eventually became queen who saved her entire people. Esther reminds us that nothing is impossible with God. And the book of Esther is one of only 2 books in the Bible named after a woman. She's an orphan, and she's adopted by her cousin Mordecai. And Mordecai was a God-fearing man who loved her dearly and raised Esther well in the face of dreadful circumstances. Oh, and apparently, the king, when he held this beauty pageant in his quest for a new queen, the king was dishonoring countless young women, stripping them of their virginity and casting them aside to the rank of concubine. And that's the same as a sex slave, without the title or privileges of queen or wife. So Esther she took control of her responses with humility and grace, it says here. And during the 12 months that Esther was put through the beauty treatments required, it was her character that gained the favor of those in authority. When her turn came to be brought before the king, she was allowed to bring whatever she wanted with her to garner favor. Instead of manipulation, she chose trust. So it says here, from a quote from the book of Esther, she asked for nothing other than what Haggai, the king's eunuch who was in charge of the harem, suggested, and Esther won the favor of everyone who saw her. So she really had a character. So when Esther calls for the fast, she says, "Go, gather all the Jews who are in Susa, and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I will go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish." Whew, wow, I'm getting chills, like reading this. This is so cool. And she, like, God uses her, like, she has been brought to this royal position for such a time as that. And it was so clearly, like, God, like, leading her to be there at that time. And then they saved their entire people group, all of the Jews. Imagine how many people would have died. Like, women, children, men, innocent. And they would have just been killed just because some rich person suggested, "Oh, we should kill all the Jews." And the king was like, "All right, let's kill them." Like, what? They are human lives. How is that possible? Wow, yeah, so that's a little bit about Esther. And, like, there's so much more, obviously, to dive into and so much more to explore about her character. Like, she's really inspiring. Wow, what a character. So I really encourage you to read the book of Esther. It's 10 chapters in the Bible. And yeah, because there's a lot more to the story. There are a lot more details, obviously. But yeah, I really enjoyed doing this, and the little artwork that came out of it was very nice. I really enjoyed doing a kind of character study. So what I did with all the portraits of Esther was that I just like found some different depictions of Esther online and just drew different interpretations of her, like who was she, what did she look like, and what was like her character, her personality. But it seems like she was really noble, and she was really like a really cool and epic like woman with character and like integrity and honor, and she was really faithful and she was really brave. So be inspired by Esther, and yeah, I pray that you'll have a blessed day. Thank you for joining this little project of mine. I really had a lot of fun doing it, and I hope I can do something like this again, because I'm really passionate about like bringing the Bible to life and the things that we can learn from it. So go and read the book of Esther and have a great day. I will see you around.